Have you ever wanted to fly the Millennium Falcon, making a profit by hauling cargo across the galaxy? Perhaps you'd like to be a bounty hunter, taking contracts and tracking down your target. Well, you can't, not officially at least. Many fans of Star Wars would love a game like that. About the closest you'll find are the 2 MMOs. Alternatively, you can just play a completely different game. But what if you didn't have to pretend it was Star Wars? Today, we're looking at the best option, a modern open-world space game, one that can be reskinned into a new setting. This is Star Wars Genesis. It's a total conversion mod for Starfield. That means it can provide several critical parts of the fantasy. You can walk around carrying a DL-44 blaster. If you want to fly a YT-1300, you can. Upgrade your ship for some space combat, or just use it for smuggling spies past the authorities. There are certainly flaws to this mod. Many of them are inherited from Starfield. Even so, the result is something remarkable. It's very hard to find competition for Genesis. If you want what it offers, this is amazing. Let's get started and explore the game. Working with Genesis, we ran into a problem. Like Starfield, this is meant to be a long-term game. You could spend hundreds of hours on a single character. That's not ideal when you're trying to analyze the game. We needed to understand everything and then record gameplay to engage with all the mechanics at our own pace. In cases like this, we use Wand, an application that supports over 3,500 games. It lets you customize the gameplay to suit your needs. Unlimited Sprint, for example, saves a lot of time. We could add skill points to instantly unlock more of the game. Crafting and research are quite important, so we turned on Items Don't Decrease. That allowed us to duplicate the crafting ingredients. We already know how to get them, so it just saves time. Start by launching the game through Wand. It'll automatically detect installed games from any shop. Oh, but you need a mod manager. Just tell Wand to launch that. It'll be fine. Bring up the game overlay with Alt-W. Then turn on the assist options as needed. God mode and one-hit kills if you need footage from the end of the dungeon. Disable the wait mechanic so you can collect more items. Even use maps to find your way around. If you have a job and responsibilities, you might only get an hour of gaming. But maybe you'd like to play Red Dead Redemption and Baldur's Gate 3. Download Wand for free using our link wand.gg/thebreadcircus in the description and play your games your way. On November 24th to December 1st, Wand is offering 25% off of their annual Pro subscription. This is the lowest price they offer all year and the best time to unlock the full Wand experience. Use the promo code WANDBF25. The first thing you need to do is create a character. You might think this would be unimportant. After all, the base game lets you do anything. Or rather, you can eventually do everything with one character. There's almost no mechanical impact from your choices. If you're going to play a human character, none of this matters. However, Genesis makes one huge change. Aliens exist, and you can be one of them. This is very important for executing a character concept. Any idea you come up with will include a race. Human smuggler, Rhodian bounty hunter, Quarren assassin. When playing Genesis, you can actually create those. You might even get some ideas just from scrolling through the options. What kind of characters would Duros and Trandoshans be? That Ishi Tib. What class of ship does he fly? It's exactly the sort of freedom that most games don't allow. Of course, there are drawbacks. You can't play as anything with a unique body structure. Dug, Hutt, Verpine, all off limits. Which isn't a big deal. There are plenty of humanoids in the galaxy. Another issue is related to headgear. All the hats and helmets are created for humans. Most aliens have a large head in some way. That means a lot of hats, hoods, and helmets won't fit. Best case scenario, they go on anyway, despite there being no room for eye stalks. Other items will just clip inside your head. In any other game, this might be a problem, but if you play in first person, you'll almost never see the issue. Another solution is to just never wear any hats. As we will discover in the combat section, that's quite viable. You don't suffer too much from not having a helmet on. Unfortunately, there is no real answer. You can get around it by just playing as a human. But that rather defeats the purpose of playing a Star Wars game. You can be a human anywhere, but how often can you be Soliston? Picking your head is really the most important choice. There are some with mechanical effects, though. Selecting a backstory is mostly unchanged from the vanilla game. Apart from some very rare dialogue checks, there's only one result. You are essentially given 3 skill points for free. Pick anything you like, but think about the skills. Those will influence your gameplay in the early hours. But then again, it is only 3 skill points. You can earn those easily enough when you get playing. Genesis changes the start in quite a few ways. You're no longer trapped in that mine. Instead, the mod lets you select a starting location. If you intend to stay there for a while, that really changes things. Starting on Nar Shaddaa versus Coruscant. But if you intend to leave immediately, it's not a big deal. Fuel and range limits don't really exist in this game. Technically they do, but they don't matter. It's a short flight from anywhere to anywhere else. More impactful is your starting equipment. This offers what the character creator just implied. Picking your background here actually matters, at least for the first half hour. If you claim to be a civilian, that's what you are. No armor, no real weapons, nothing. This is your everyday bloke off the street. You get a stun blaster, but you don't want to use it. Get into combat with that, and you'll lose every time. If you want to fight, you need to loot or buy a better weapon. Civilian is the logical start for many character concepts. But if you'd like a leg up, there are other choices. You can go for bounty hunter, smuggler, or something military. That'll get you a weapon that actually deals damage. Your choice here is entirely up to flavor. Whatever you pick, combat will be a struggle, so why not pick the option that suits your character? It's a nice improvement over the original introduction to the game. You can be in the mining industry if you want to, but it's no longer compulsory. In general, Star Wars Genesis has a strong start. You don't spawn in on rails, trapped in a cart ride. The gameplay starts quicker, which is a very good thing. Being able to start the game and do what you like is useful. Rolling up a new character becomes appealing. Maybe you want to play through again with a different archetype. See what it's like to be a weak-way mercenary. Just a few words of warning first. You are encouraged to join Constellation. For a start, they give you a free bed and storage chest, somewhere to put all your excess arms and armor. The main quest is also necessary to get force powers. That's the other warning. No Jedi allowed. Genesis doesn't encourage melee combat. There are no lightsabers, and blasters are deadly. You can't become Jedi or Sith. If you want to be a Jedi, try almost any Star Wars game. Genesis has a focus on the more typical blaster combat. Which brings us to the most significant changes. If you try to play this mod like Starfield, it won't go well. Basically, everything is more lethal. Weapons and armor are 10 times stronger than normal. And your health, well, that doesn't keep up. Health scaling has been reduced to 1 point per level. That means grinding XP won't save you in battle. The same goes for healing. Normally, you could just eat food in the middle of combat. In Genesis, all healing happens over time. In practical terms, this means extreme caution. You may be used to standing out in the open while firing. That's a natural consequence of weapons not being terribly lethal. It takes a lot of bullets to make sure each mercenary is dead. At the same time, you can survive a few hits. Between armor and healing items, you don't have to be too worried. If you try the same strategy in Genesis, it won't work. One blaster bolt will fly in, and you'll be loading a save. To solve this problem, the key is to avoid being shot. That's good advice for any situation. Playing Genesis, it's required. You won't be surviving more than a few hits at any level. When starting out, your gameplay loop is very short. Land a hit, get in cover, and quick save. Then you start again, trying to make your next shot. Repeat this process until everyone around you is dead. Sure, you could try it all in real time, but for the first encounter, that'll be difficult. This combat experience is one of the main selling points for Genesis. Primarily, it's a Star Wars reskin, but it also lets you play with blasters that feel lethal. You aren't the only one ripped apart by blasters. Few enemies can survive multiple headshots. That's what makes the combat interesting at all. Suddenly, it's not about how long you can spend firing. It's about shooting the other guy without getting shot yourself. When fighting inside, there's a lot of hiding around corners, sticking your head through the doorway to see if anyone's there. If you're lucky, there will be more cover available inside each room, but the general principle is to minimize your chances of being shot. The next priority is to line up headshots. That way the enemy doesn't have time to retaliate. It also uses less ammunition, but that's rarely a factor. Later on, you can get bold. Jump around the corner brandishing an E11. Spray the general area with energy bolts. Almost nothing can survive that. Things get more exciting when you go outside. Suddenly, it's possible to stay at long range. That completely changes the process. You won't find doorways and corners all over the place. A fully automatic weapon is no longer ideal. What you need is something precise, high damage. If you're doing it right, you should be on the edge of visual range. That means a telescope would be handy, something with enough magnification to see your target. This gameplay loop seems a bit familiar, sneaking around the outside, carefully picking off targets. It's like an outpost in the Far Cry 3 series. Every time you fight outside, that's how it plays out. Hide behind some rocks, preferably on the high ground. Keep an eye on where the enemies are, and when you get a chance, take one of them out. Then you might want to hide and reposition. It's great fun when you get the hang of it, carefully unpicking a knot of enemies. You still need to quick save after each kill, of course. Later on, you find better gear. You have a really good blaster rifle with a scope on it. Maybe you have enough armor to survive 2 or 3 hits. That allows you to be slightly less cautious. Stick your head out of cover for longer. Decide how far away you want to engage the enemy from. The core principles are still the same. Combat is lethal for you and the enemy, but now you have just enough flexibility to play your way. The excessive lethality actually helps with that. We mentioned earlier that you can go without a helmet. That's because blaster bolts hurt either way. You are going to stay behind cover and quicksave a lot. So what's the harm in taking off your helmet? It doesn't give you that much armor. For the weapons, it's a similar story. Maybe you really love the T21 repeating blaster. Even if it's not the optimal weapon, you can just decide to use it. All blasters do enough damage to be useful. Optimizing everything doesn't help all that much. It'll still be hard, no matter what you do. So why not enjoy yourself? That logic normally works quite well. There's just one big exception. Melee weapons are readily available. As they should be. The Vibroblade is glorious. All the various melee weapons are powerful. You could definitely kill something with one of those. But first, you need to get into melee range. Difficult when you're being shot at. The ideal use for a sword is for assassination. Find an enemy who isn't aware of you, then end him rightly with a sneak attack. Of course, you could use a blaster for the same thing. Another detail for combat is the damage type. These have been changed as part of the mod. Vanilla Starfield uses ballistic damage as the default. Most weapons deal ballistic damage. That's what you focus on with your armor. But kinetic weapons are not too common in Star Wars. That's why Genesis renamed the damage type. Almost everything will now deal plasma damage. That doesn't change very much for you. It's just worth keeping in mind in case you see ballistic mentioned. Not all the tooltips have been updated. Stun weapons still use the EM damage type, a real missed opportunity for Genesis. They should be ion damage, so you can have ion cannons. These damage types are mostly irrelevant. You don't encounter the others very often. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. Armor tends to be balanced across all damage types. Just put on the best suit you have. You can specialize the armor, and that should be against plasma damage. Starfield works on damage reduction with diminishing returns. The best armor in Genesis is rated at 2400. Exactly what that means is quite hard to understand. From what we can see, that gives 96% damage reduction. Impressive, until you look at the context. A blaster bolt might deal 700 damage. Your starting health is 200 hit points. It still only takes a few shots to kill you. So how are you meant to survive the gameplay? Healing is much more difficult in Genesis. You can use food, but not like in the vanilla game. At most, you can have one item to eat and one to drink. Consuming any more will just replace the previous effect. Combining the two buffs, you heal 1 hit point per second. That means it takes 2 minutes to fully regenerate. As you level up, that'll only take longer. 2 minutes is a long time when you're being hunted. You can put skill points into regeneration, but you can also spend them on increased health. Natural regen will always be quite slow. Luckily, there are better options. Anything with Bacta in the name is far more useful. Those still heal you over time, not instantly, but they do it fast, only a few seconds for a full heal. That would be very powerful, but Genesis has lethal combat. You can be drained of life much faster than it can restore, especially if you're hit by force lightning. The only way to survive that is with a dose of Bacta, possibly 2 or 3 of them. Star Wars Genesis might not have the best combat system. It certainly won't appeal to everyone. You have to enjoy the slow process of getting through each encounter. Difficulty can be adjusted if you need it. The mod instructions have a table of console commands. These allow you to adjust your health at any time, down as low as 50 or up to 3000. Of course, having more health can increase your need for consumables. At the top end, natural regeneration would take days. That means you need more Bacta, probably bought from shops. But shops can also provide better armor and weapons. If you get credits from somewhere else, you can buy upgrades. Those can make combat substantially easier. Plenty of non-combat actions will give you XP, and that will give skill points, which can be spent on combat abilities. Genesis doesn't scale enemies to match your level. You can start by avoiding combat until you're ready for it. Out-level your enemies. Arguably an improvement from the base game. Another system that was changed was starships, one of the best features in vanilla Starfield. Ship combat is perfectly adequate, a decent clone of Elite Dangerous or any of its ancestors. Flying and fighting aren't interesting on their own. What really gives it life is what you're flying. Starfield gives you many pre-built ships. You can customize them, or make one of your own. All of that is still possible in Star Wars Genesis. The difference is that now you have more options. New parts, always nice to have. Some of them are Star Wars flavored, but that's not all there is to it. It's possible to buy or build certain familiar models, something like the YT-1300 light freighter. Space combat is more fun when you're flying the Millennium Falcon. The same goes for a few other ships. There are starfighters like the X-Wing. You can even use a Consular-class corvette. Simply having these ships is a good start, but Genesis is built on top of Starfield. All these ships are modular. Let's take that example of the Falcon. It has a quad laser turret on the top and bottom. That's what you get by default. But you can just go into the ship editor and duplicate them. Why not add a couple more beside it? 6 quad laser turrets in total. Then maybe you squeeze another pair in behind. You've just upgraded from 2 turrets to 10. That's a key part of the Han Solo fantasy, being able to customize and improve your ship. That's how everything on the Falcon got into its current state. The same principle applies to other ships. For example, that Consular is built using Starfield parts. A remarkable likeness and very convenient. You can swap out almost any part you like. Replace the reactor, shield generator, hyperdrive. By default, the Consular is very lightly armed, but it has plenty of weapon hardpoints. You can have yours armed to the teeth. It's also possible to change the paint color. You could spend hours in the ship editor. But we haven't even touched on the main thing. You see, Starfield has several rules. One of these is a ban on stacking. You might think that 2 shield generators are better than 1. The vanilla game will prevent you from building such a ship. If you are allowed multiple copies, only one of them will function. This makes it a lot easier to balance the parts. You don't have to compare low-tier shields to the rest. The player simply can't combine them, so better ones are the only option. Genesis removes that rule. Suddenly, those other factors matter. You need to compare every shield generator. Maybe some are cheap for what they can do. Others might have more efficient use of power. Of course, adding multiple generators has its problems. More weight, and there are only so many mounting points. All of these factors might affect your decisions. And it's the same for most part categories. If you need more power, just add another reactor. It certainly offers more freedom in ship design. However, there is a reason those parts were limited. You were meant to balance power distribution. What if you have great engines and weapons and shields? Suddenly, you might not be able to power all of them at once. Genesis doesn't have that problem. If you need more power, add more reactors. Now you can run all systems at full power, even if the game can't display how much power is going to those shields. That means the power distribution mechanic can be avoided. It only exists if you allow it to. In theory, you could have a ship mostly made of reactors and shields, practically invulnerable if a bit sluggish. In that sense, game balance is up to you. If you exploit the systems and stop having fun, whose fault is that? Luckily, most systems don't have this vulnerability. Hyperdrive performance doesn't really matter. Agility and speed at sublight are limited. That leaves only the various weapons. These actually have some restrictions on them. For a start, there are only 3 weapon hotkeys. It's not possible to have more unique weapons. Duplicates are fine, but there must be no variation. Weapons work differently from other systems. They have a maximum charge, and firing depletes it. That can be a good thing if you stay reasonable, but it's possible to push things too far. Suppose your version of the Falcon has 15 turrets. That can increase your alpha damage in the first volley, but at a certain point, adding more guns is detrimental. They drain more energy with every shot. All of that has to regenerate before you can fire again. Maybe it gives better damage per second in the long run. It's something you'd have to experiment with. One strong volley or a continuous barrage. We should also mention that not everything works perfectly. Starfield was not designed for Star Wars ships. Take the Naboo Royal Starship, for example. Technically, it's still a modular ship. You can add or remove parts, but the interior is just clipped inside the hull. It might look nice, but underneath is very untidy. That's generally the case with all Star Wars ships. The fuselage is just a hollow shell. It may not even have proper collision detection. Things get even more extreme for starfighters. All the components do exist somewhere in the ship, but fighters are much smaller than Starfield scale. A single reactor should be heavier than any fighter. Same goes for the hyperdrive and every other component. In fact, you should treat them as not having an interior. Skip directly in and out of the cockpit, otherwise you might end up falling through the world. It's not ideal, but on the other hand, you get to fly the N1. The problem is that these are just ordinary ship components. They can be attached to any vessel in the editor. Starfighters have reactors just as powerful as anything else, and they can be attached to any kind of ship. You can build much smaller while still keeping the same capabilities. That isn't a tremendous advantage, but it definitely feels like cheating, especially because some of them are available in multiple classes. The Delta 7 has a Class A or Class C reactor. That system of letters is from the unmodified game. In Starfield, they mostly lock better parts. You need higher skill levels to access the best engines, weapons, etc. Some are directly locked behind various other skills, but some equipment requires a Class C reactor. You can't install one of those unless your pilot skill is at maximum. It's a decent bit of game design, all things considered. The gradual unlocking of parts will constantly change your plans. Every time you go into the ship editor, there might be something new. When you get a new ship class, it's a chance to redesign everything. These don't have a huge influence on Genesis. You can get a Class A reactor that's just as good as the Class C. Star Wars ships are mostly implemented as Class A. That means you can fly them all immediately. As a consequence, their equipment is entirely Class A. Every proton torpedo and quad laser turret, all the sublight engines, shield generators, and hyperdrives. That completely changes the progression curve. There's only one thing restraining your ship design: the credits needed to buy and upgrade it, and you can get several Star Wars ships at no cost. All things considered, shipbuilding is a highlight. It was good in the base game, and adding Star Wars makes it better. There are certain problems with the balance, but there's nothing forcing you to take advantage of those. If you don't want an overpowered ship, don't build one. Modifying the Star Wars ships is a lot harder. It's best to run them stock, or build something yourself. The Delta 7 seems to only exist as a parts kit. If you want one, you have to assemble it from scratch. Now it's time we discussed progression. Normally this might be simple. You start with iron equipment, then upgrade to steel. Later, you wear armor forged from gods you've slain. All very simple and straightforward. Level up, and you get access to better loot. That lets you fight tougher enemies for more XP. There are several ways to implement this in a roleplay system. Usually, all of your loot has an item level, or if not, then it's associated with a level range. Warhammers will usually keep the same attack speed, but when you're level 50, you get the Vorpal Warhammer. It does more damage, and maybe has some other benefits. Sometimes, weapon types will be restricted. No Bardiche can spawn below level 20. These ensure a constant supply of upgrades, a better version of what you're already using, or something new, an alternative to try out. Genesis isn't quite balanced as normal. Almost everything is available from the start. Some weapons may be harder to find, but they exist, and the equipment doesn't get stronger when you level up. On the bright side, that makes it very fair. If you pick up a certain weapon, you have it now. No need to question if you got a high roll on its damage. You could find your favorite blaster in the first 10 minutes, then keep using it for the rest of the campaign. On the other hand, this means removing the upgrade loop. After a few hours, you stop thinking, this new gun is better. You have the equipment you like, so you stop cycling. All your loot ends up being sold instead of used. Though to be fair, there are some systems layered on top. Genesis inherited some tiers of quality. These add a few modifiers to your equipment. Do you want to have an extra 25% damage against human enemies? Yes, that's always a direct upgrade. All else being equal, you want this weapon quality. But these are quite rare drops. You might only get a purple version instead of the orange one. Each tier means one additional enchantment, and of course, those are selected randomly, so it's not easy to find your ideal combination of effects. It'll be a long-term grind to optimize your gear. In the beginning, it's always an upgrade. Even when the bonus is situational, it's better to have one. Later on, you have a pretty good set of them. Now, those legendary items are all being sold. If you can find something better, it'll be rare. That's where the other layers of progression come in. Almost all your weapons and armor can be modified. When you find some loot, it may or may not have mods already. In the early game, you take what you can get. If you find something with a scope, so much the better. These weapon mods can profoundly change how a blaster performs. Finding a DH-17 with a binary trigger could be great early on. It would give a higher rate of fire than a semi-auto E11. This creates 3 overlapping systems. The loot system needs to give you the right base item. Then you're hoping it's legendary quality, that it got a really strong set of buffs from the quality system. And finally, you want it to have the perfect modifications. That last one is the only system you have control over. Finding a workbench is fairly easy. Then you can take your items and customize them. Or at least, you can in theory. Weapon and armor mods are long-term progression. Very little customization is available at first. You're largely at the mercy of those random drops. It's easier to remove a bad feature than add a good one. You need to find something close enough and make it a little better. One reason it takes so long is the skill points. Weapon mods require 1 skill, armor has another. Getting both of those to max rank takes 8 points. Except that there's a tier system, meaning you need to invest more points. Already, you need to be about level 10 for this. But that's not all. Here's another layer. Those mods are also locked behind the research system. This one has its own relevant skill. If you're going to do a lot of research, maybe it's worth the points. That brings you to about level 15, just for the crafting system, assuming you didn't put any points into stealth or combat. If you have any other priorities, it could take much longer. But that isn't the only reason. Another system could add even more delays. Crafting a weapon mod is not free. It requires certain components and materials. There are quite a few of these to track down, so you might have the laser sight unlocked for 20 hours. Then finally you find the missing item. Now you have enough to craft a single one. Applying it to a second blaster will need more resources. Some of them you might need to buy from a shop. Others could be found lying around on the drop tables. It's possible you'd start base building just to mine a resource. But modifying equipment is only one item sink. Completing all the research will also require a lot of resources. All of these are tasks you do in the background. During the rest of your gameplay, keep an eye out for cortosis, or durasteel, or Tabana gas. Whatever it is you need to make progress. Keep in mind the opportunity cost. All those resources could have been sold for credits. There's a price tag on anything you buy, but no matter how you get them, you end up with less money. Maybe that's not a big deal, but it could be. You could have spent that money on Bacta, or ship upgrades, or anything else. All these layers combine for your gear progression. Find a good weapon and some armor. Upgrade them as much as you can. Research and spend skill points to unlock more upgrades. Then you find a legendary version of your blaster, so you start applying all your favorite mods to that one. If those used any uncommon resources, you need to find them. This upgrade system is the only one that has an upkeep cost, or at least an investment every time you make changes. Still, eventually you finish the upgrades. You have your ideal equipment, just as you like it. When there's no more gear to upgrade, what's left? Progression is limited to a few systems. You could upgrade your ship, as we mentioned earlier. You can learn force powers if you feel like it. But the main progression is your skills. There is one huge difference between Genesis and Starfield. Originally, skills were locked. You put 1 point in, then you have to play the game. Training your missile skill requires using missiles. It isn't possible to spend 2 points in a row. Genesis removes that locking system. That has some implications for your gameplay. It's possible to save up your skill points. When you need lockpicking, you can learn that. Go from 0 training to maximum in 2 seconds. That allows you to specialize much earlier. In the vanilla game, you're encouraged to branch out. Have as many of those challenges active as possible. That way you can progress towards multiple skills at the same time. One for headshot kills, another for using a pistol. It's not possible to go deep, so you go wide. 8 skills at rank 1, instead of 2 at rank 4. Genesis doesn't necessarily change anything. It's still possible to be a jack of all trades, but now you have an alternative. At level 5, your character can be an expert in something, which is what you'd expect for certain backstories. If you're playing a bounty hunter, should he know how to fight? As a fighter ace, you should know how to fly. Genesis doesn't give you skill points for free. You still need to level up by playing the game. It's just easier to get your character started. Otherwise, your smuggler might be terrible at smuggling. Then, halfway through the campaign, he figures it out. You are free to decide the sequence of events. That plays into yet another decision. Out there in the galaxy, you can find some good blasters. Armor is a bit harder to come by. For most of the game, you can loot the armor, find something your enemies are wearing. It might be better than what you have already. Later, you can modify your favorite armor, give it extra protection or some other bonuses. That's generally how you're intended to play. Maybe you can even craft some good armor. There is a suit of endgame armor. It's not available until near the end of the main quest. You'll have to do a lot of the game in scavenged armor. This endgame stuff, when fully upgraded, is unbeatable. The only reason you wouldn't wear it is for role-playing. Maybe your character joined the Rebel Alliance. Therefore, he refuses to wear any kind of stormtrooper items. But from a mechanical perspective, that's the end. There is no progression. It'll be the last suit you ever wear. Just like weapon progression, you hit a dead end. All armor becomes irrelevant. You won't find anything better, so you don't even need to check. It's kind of fun to have the best equipment, but it's also fun to get those incremental upgrades along the way. What if you could jump straight into the second best armor? Now there's only one set that will be an upgrade. Wearing anything else would be suboptimal. You'd have one set of gear for most of the game. Get through the tutorial dungeon, then get this upgrade. Now forget about armor until the end game. Somewhere in the galaxy, there is a dungeon. You can go there and fight your way inside. It'll take a bit of effort, maybe some skill points. It's easier when you have a decent blaster at your side. Lockpicking might also be useful. At the end of the day, you reach the bottom floor. There will be plenty of loot there and on the way down. You even get a free ship for your trouble. But most importantly, there are 2 armor cases down there. One of these holds the armor of the legend, Boba Fett. That would be the 3rd best armor in the game. Maybe give it to your companion if you brought one. The real prize is the other suit. This armor belonged to a man called The. Clearly, that's another suit of Mandalorian armor, and it was found inside the Bat Cave. We'll just call this guy The Bat-Mandalorian. This equipment is what really breaks the progression. Now, granted, you never have to wear it. If you think this breaks game balance, just don't use it. Wait until you've stopped finding natural upgrades. Then, and only then, should you visit the Batcave. That way it appears in sequence, the logical next step. However, there is an argument for going there early. Maybe you don't enjoy the balance of combat. If you think it's too lethal, perhaps armor would help. So you leave the tutorial dungeon. Head straight for the Batcave as soon as you can. Then you get an armor rating of nearly 2,000. It would be more rewarding to start smaller. There's a free set of armor on the planet Mandalore. Through playing the game, you'll find Beskar fragments. Those can be used to gradually repair that suit. It'll be decent to start with and get very good by the end. A more natural progression than jumping right to the top tier. It's not something you can just throw money at either. You need to find the upgrade materials. At the end of the day, it's your decision. If you want to use the optimal equipment, you can. But there is another type of player. Someone who wants to dress as a rebel or imperial soldier, maybe as a bounty hunter or mercenary, or even forgo armor entirely. You're playing a civilian, so you wear clothes instead. As we said, combat is always very lethal, so you can get away with lower quality armor. In most cases, the sensible weapon is a blaster rifle, but maybe you want to play a gunslinger instead, so you specialize in pistols and use them no matter what. The choice is yours. It's also worth noting that these blasters feel good. If you get your hands on a DL-44, it behaves how you expect. As a heavy blaster pistol, it has low capacity, slow rate of fire, and good damage. Modifying the weapon lets you customize it to your liking. Put a scope on there so it looks like Han's pistol, or you could add one that works for you to look through, make it even more powerful, or improve the rate of fire. The same principle applies to almost any weapon. And there is quite a variety of blasters to enjoy. Han's isn't the only one from the cantina. Greedo's DT-12 pistol is small but effective. Ponta Barber's SE-14C can be quite valuable. It's a machine pistol, very useful at close range. Then we have the DH-17, widely used by both Rebel and Imperial forces. A solid choice, but quickly overtaken by other options. A staple for the early game will be the RT-97C. To start with, it may be your only weapon with a scope, but this isn't just a sniper rifle, it's fully automatic. Though if you're looking for a machine gun, the DLT-19 is better. Not the most accurate weapon, but it brings quantity. Precision is the role for its cousin, the DLT-20A. This will likely become your sniper rifle. There are better options, but not many. You might think of the T-21 for its low rate of fire, but that's not really the purpose of the T-21, and the game is quite accurate. You can work with it as a marksman's rifle. Its rate of fire is about 1 per second, as it should be. Adding a scope is possible, and you can tweak the fire rate. If you love the T-21 as much as we do, this is a good representation. Really, almost any blaster can be found here. Boba Fett's carbine, the EE-3, perfect if you're playing a more capable bounty hunter. There's the A280 blaster rifle, as seen on Hoth, though unfortunately it is the AR-15 version. The wiki calls the Sturmgewehr rifle the A295. That version does not seem to be included in Genesis. Still, the A280 is a classic blaster rifle. Definitely possible to use it as your main weapon. It's everything you could ask for in a blaster rifle. It's not just blasters from the original trilogy. Imagine one of the most numerous weapons in the prequels. The Bactoid E5, used by standard battle droids. Honestly, it's not a great weapon, which is exactly what we'd expect, so well done. It's powerful enough, but the only reason to use the E5 is because you like it. There's also the E5S, the sniper variant. This is probably the best sniper rifle, but only holds 4 shots. Ammunition is the other remarkable feature. These are implemented with special Bactoid ammo. It may be difficult to secure enough to use as your primary weapon. The other notable Phantom Menace weapons are from Naboo. First, the CR-2 by Corellian Arms. A compact submachine gun, very appealing. It can even be modified to have the high capacity it deserves. Sadly, it isn't the best for the SMG role. Using the CR-2 is a personal choice. Its damage doesn't make up for the slow rate of fire. You'd be better off with almost any other full auto weapon. At least have something hotkeyed. Then you can use the CR-2 every time it's viable. But when you get in trouble, pull out the E11. Those other 2 Naboo weapons are pistols, the Security S5 and the ELG-3A. Going with the S5 is not a bad move. It's powerful enough to rival the DL-44 as a heavy pistol. Both of them are known for having scopes. You can modify those to be more effective. As for the ELG-3A, that is surprisingly potent. It doesn't have a very high ammo capacity. That means you're best off using it as a silenced weapon. With a damage bonus from sneaking, it'll do wonders. It's also strong enough to work as a primary weapon. Great if you want something elegant and civilized. These Naboo weapons can be hard to find though. That's also true for this next option, the DC-17M, as used by Republic Commandos. This is actually a very strong weapon. Accuracy is a weak point, which is, accurate. This is the base variant. It isn't actually modular. No switching attachments on the fly or with a workbench. It'll never be a sniper rifle, but it's a potent SMG. Certainly on par with any of the others. This one also suffers from using uncommon ammunition. Save it for special occasions, or go shopping. Clone rifles. The DC-15A only turns up late in the game. Unfortunately, it's not as great a weapon as you might imagine. It can't be modified to use a scope, as it should be. Accuracy and rate of fire are also lackluster. Clones also have their short rifle. Granted, the DC-15S isn't necessary. That would be just a slight reskin of the E11. Another blaster you only use because you like it. Really, there are only a few blasters that stand out as missing. Leia's pistol, the DDC Defender, missing. It might never be your preferred weapon, but it'd be nice to have. Another delight would be the KYD-21 pistol. That's one that would get constant use. But then again, there are so many good options already. It's hard to find hotkeys for all of them as it is. You don't actually have a reason to use all of the classics. Something with a scope, something full auto, and something with a silencer. Those are all you really need for the entire game. And who said they have to be 3 different weapons? Given a good enough blaster, it can do everything for you. Now, what weapon could possibly be that good? Anytime we try to compare them, one blaster always wins. The E11 is just in a league of its own. It's not the optimal sniper rifle, but it's good enough. There is a scope on there, and it's quite accurate. It also has a folding stock, not that anyone has ever used it. And in Genesis, that remains true. There is no weapon mod to extend the stock. By far the most important change is to the fire mode. By default, the E11 spawns as semi-automatic. That lines up with what we see in the movies. Single shots fired with some care. You can absolutely get some good use from that version. However, the real power lies in the full auto mode. You might try using short controlled bursts. That can be effective even at medium range. The E11 shines when used as a panic button. Maybe you're trying to use the DL-44, picking off your targets with a single shot each. Then you get surprised by an enemy getting too close. Grab the E11 and hold down the trigger. Almost everything should melt under the onslaught. When something survives, you just reload and do it again. This rifle has good damage and an excellent rate of fire. It may be the ultimate weapon in Star Wars Genesis, which would be accurate to the setting. There are a few other assorted weapons, flamethrowers and scatterguns. Nice to have if you're interested in such things. Though to be honest, their niche is already taken. Shotguns and flamers are good at close range, but so are submachine guns. You can use a bowcaster if you feel like it. Good for role-playing, but not optimal, which is exactly how that weapon should be. You may also find other blasters, completely unfamiliar ones. Anything you don't recognize is probably from Disney. Either that or TCW. Not something we'd ever use, but vendors will pay credits for them. So, the blaster progression is quite delightful. Early on, you can find a new blaster on every body. As you play more, you'll have a better selection. New ones aren't as exciting. You might want to keep an eye on shops for any new toys. The other big bit of loot would be armor. At first, picking up any gear will be an upgrade. It doesn't really offer much protection, but having some armor is better than having none. This early gear is very easy to replace. It doesn't look familiar, so you won't get attached. In the late game, most of this isn't worth bringing back to sell. But eventually, you start getting some decent armor. There are stormtroopers all over the place. You can just kill them and take their stuff. Plus there are variants, like scout trooper equipment. Even the pistol that shot Leia. One of the most exciting is a suit of clone commando armor. It's very cool and has great stats. There isn't much that can beat the commando armor, in terms of looks or functionality. Then you have a bunch of other options. A lot of Rebel Alliance gear, mostly from Echo Base. Neat idea, but you wouldn't wear it in summer. One suit in particular looks very much like Vader's, but the mask is completely different. Aside from that, there is one recurring theme. An awful lot of Mandalorian armor. It seems like every skirmish, you find someone wearing it. It would be harder to avoid Mandalorian armor than to find it. There are even some variations to it. The normal stuff is named explorer. That's what matches Jango Fett. A bit strange. The movies show us only one set, passed down from Jango to Boba Fett. The expanded universe used to tell us it was rare. Jodo Cast is able to impersonate Boba Fett. That's because they have the only two suits in the galaxy. Genesis might as well be set during the Mandalorian Wars. Still, at least it's easy to find some. If you really want this gear, you can get it. Go in any direction, and you'll find it eventually. Speaking of going to find stuff, exploration. In this game, you can fly all over the galaxy, finding many strange and exotic planets. Then you can land on their surface to look around. Many types of terrain are possible. Just about everything you've seen in a Star Wars movie. There's certainly an appeal to wandering around. But when you're dressed as a scout trooper, it gets even better. Everywhere you go, there will be something to do. Most places have resources that you could harvest, useful if you're doing research. But it's also possible to walk around, collecting huge amounts. Then you take it back to your ship's cargo hold. After a few more trips, you've finished mining. Then you haul everything back to sell for profit. It's not the most lucrative occupation, but it's relatively safe and you get XP for it. A good way to get started if you feel like it. Just be careful of the wildlife. Or don't, kill them and take their organs. Those are what you find absolutely everywhere, but the surface map is covered in points of interest, randomly pulled from a list and scattered around. Sometimes it's just a cave, with or without monsters. Other places are buildings and spaceships. These are associated with some faction or other, maybe friendly or maybe deserted, but there's a good chance of finding combat. Starfield was criticized for these being repetitive. Genesis promises to change that. The list has been weighted, so you won't see the same building twice in a row, plus adding a lot more potential options that can spawn. But what really makes a difference is the minor changes. When you see a ship landing, it might have Trandoshans aboard. That's so much more interesting than just some mercenary gang. Do what you can to maintain your immersion. Getting to roam around what could plausibly be Star Wars is worth it. As for the roaming, you have several vehicles available. The best is a classic X-34 landspeeder. Alternatives can be fun, but they can't fly as well. The X-34 can hover almost indefinitely, and you do want to spend time in the air. These vehicles are all reskins of a standard moon buggy. They don't behave like repulsor craft. You can hear the tires grinding through the soil. Land speeders will bounce off small rocks. These are much less capable vehicles than they should be, but at least they're better than walking. It's actually worth setting up some of those outposts. When you get a chance, find a planet you like, something you'd enjoy spending time on. Then build a landing pad, a small house, storage containers, radiant mission boards, workbenches for modifying items. With Genesis, you can add all sorts of Star Wars scenery, astromechs roaming around, even an AT-ST. Plus it's convenient to have somewhere to stash your contraband. Every good smuggler needs a hideout. Now, it's time we addressed the bantha in the room. This is not an expanded universe project. It's riddled with Disney and TCW references. There are no options for disinfecting the mod list. At least not yet. Always in motion is the future. You will see axolotl dogs and groovy death gangs. Anytime you see an unfamiliar blaster, it's from the reboot. There's Kyber all over the place, and TLJ slot machines. This is a profound disappointment. Officially, the setting is a blend that has everything. It'll take fun ideas from anywhere. There will be clone commando armor, as well as Imperial gear, and also an awful lot of Mandalorian items. In principle, that's a neat idea. No restrictions from canon. Put anything in, and don't worry about how it fits together. However, that's not the full story. There's another constraint here. Star Wars Genesis is fundamentally a reskin. It's a very high-effort reskin, with a lot of changes. Genesis has earned the term total conversion. There are unbelievable amounts of new voice lines, matched so well to the originals as to be almost indistinguishable. But what are these lines saying, and why?
Don't worry, the Ministry of Antiquities won't hear a word about any of this. I promise.
In almost all cases, these are vanilla Starfield lines. They've just had the nouns replaced with Star Wars ones. The same goes for almost every quest in the game. In fact, that's the basis of the lore, trying to map Star Wars names onto Starfield. There are cultists on the edge of the known galaxy. Somehow, Palpatine returned. There was a war in the past. That'll be the Clone Wars then. Two factions that are currently in conflict, Rebellion and Empire, obviously. This is a job for World Between Worlds.
Do you think I'll be able to go into the World Between Worlds and change things so that my parents are back together?
It's really quite an unfortunate outcome. Obviously, this is the simple way to do things, but this approach leaves blatant scars. You can see Starfield underneath, trying to break free. With the same amount of effort, it could have been a total rewrite. As it is, you constantly see things that don't make sense. When you ask why, the answer doesn't come from Star Wars. It's because that's how it worked in Starfield. That's about all you need to know. Star Wars Genesis is an option. If you're looking for an open-world Star Wars game, it's here. Want to get in your X-Wing and blow some things up? You can do that in Genesis. Hauling spies past an Imperial blockade? That's fully simulated. It'll be lucrative and risky. Want to swagger around with a blaster pistol in your hand? Hang out in the underworld of Nar Shaddaa? Put on your Stormtrooper gear and kill some pirates? Gradually upgrade a YT-1300 freighter. If that's what you're looking for, you've found it. Star Wars Genesis might be your best or only option. Maybe you heard of something called Star Wars Outlaws. Thought to yourself, this game has potential. If it was completely different, I'd love it. Well, this game is completely different. It lets you play as an outlaw. If any of this caught your attention, why not try Genesis? We've left a link to the project in the video description. Make sure you read the instructions carefully. You will need a little patience to set everything up. Thank you for watching this unexpected video. We'll see you for the next one. There are two ways to support us. Become a patron at patreon.com/thebreadcircus, or become a YouTube member by clicking the join button. Alternatively, subscribe, like, and comment. Only the former options guarantee that your name lives on in history. Everything else is embarrassing YouTubey stuff.
What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that? I'm a Toydarian. My tricks don't work on me. Only money. No money, no parts, no deal.